Guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today I decided that I wanted to make like kind of a small series. It's going to be 3 videos where I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make a authentication system. So when you have an application, if you want to make, for example, basically a page where you can register and a page where you can log in to some account and store that information into a database, then you need to pass through a process called authentication. And this video specifically is going to be about how to make a simple login system and where the user can be authenticated and send that information to the database. So you can see I already created a simple React application. So over here, I divided my program into 2 parts. So there's the client folder and the server folder. And I'm going to start directly from this because I don't want to waste time talking about, for example, all the aspects of React and how to set up a React application and a Node backend, because I already did this. However, I'm just going to be focusing on the aspect of logging in and creating the users. So as you can see, I'm using MySQL for the database, and I already called a MySQL object called database, and it's already filled with all the information that we have from our database. So I'm going to open it right now. I'm going to open my MySQL workbench, and I created a database called login system. So if I come here and write my password for my local instance, I have here login system users, and our database basically is composed of an ID, a username, and a password. So the user will come here, and wait, I just realized that I wrote registration and registration. It should be registration and login. So basically there's the top part is going to be where you register a user, and the bottom one is where you log into an account. And we're going to do this directly from React. So over here, what we need to do is we need to grab the information from whatever we're writing in our registration inputs and try to validate it. So in order to do that, we need to create 2 states. Let me write const username reg, which basically means like a username that you're registering. So set username reg equals use state, and it's going to be a string. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to do the same for the password. And these are the 2 states which are going to store all of our password and username information we're going to be passing. So set password reg, and now that's okay. So what we need to do now is we need to grab that information from the input and set it equal to that states. So if we go here to our input of type text, this is where we grab our username. We can just write on change and pass a lambda function, so an empty function which will simply set username reg equal to the event.targets.value. And I am aware we haven't actually defined the event yet. We grab event by simply writing e over here in our lambda function, and now we will know that it's grabbing the event from that input. So we can do the same thing over here on the password input. So if we come here, we write this over here and we change this to set password reg. Now we're grabbing all of our information. However, we want to send that to our backend, right? And I already configured most of my backend API. You can see here it's running. I can, if I write here node index.js, you can see it says running server. And if we go here and write localhost 3001, it's loading our backend. We want to create a route in our backend, so app.post, which will basically be register, and it's basically going to take a require and a response, and inside of it we're going to be making the query to insert a new user to the database. So if we grab here db, which is database.query, and we pass in the following MySQL statement. So insert into users, which I guess is the name, right? Let me see. Yeah, users is the name of the database. So insert into users, and we pass in the columns, which are username and password, values, and then we pass 2 question marks. So basically like this. We can simply pass those 2 variables right here in an array. So we need to create a variable called username and a variable called password, which will then pass this and set it equal to the values we are inserting into the database. So this is how you make a simple MySQL query in a Node API or an Express backend. So we can even grab here any errors that occur or even the result from our query. And over here, we're just gonna console log any error that appears. So this is our basic standard query. And now we have to make it so that whenever we're calling, first of all, this HTTP request, and also we need to make sure that we're passing the values for the username and the password from our front end to our backend. So let's save this right here. Let's go over here. And I already installed a package in my client folder called Axios. For those who don't know, Axios is a very simple way of replicating the fetch function where you can make HTTP requests. So I already have it installed. I just wrote yarn add Axios or npm install Axios, and I'm just going to import it right here. So Axios from Axios. And if we come here, we need to create a function so that whenever we click on this button register, we're going to send all of this to information to our backend so that it is inserted into our database. So let's create a function called register, and it's basically going to call an axios.post, and inside of here let's write https colon 2 slashes localhost 3001 slash register, right? I think that's the route, I guess, right? Yeah. And over here we're going to be passing an object which is going to contain two properties: a username, which is going to be equal to the username reg we set above, and a password, which is going to be equal to the password reg we set above. So now we're sending these two variables to our backend, and at the end of this Axios post request, we can even write a promise, so .then, and we can grab the response, and so response, and pass a function which is going to console log the response. So if there's an error, we're going to see it, and if everything goes right, we're going to see it as well. So now we're sending both information, and we want to make it so that whenever we click the button, we want to call this function. So let's come here to our register button, and let's add an on-click event. So basically we can come here and change this to register, and come to our backend and grab both of those variables here so that we can pass in our MySQL query. So in order to grab something in an API made with Express and Node, you need to make sure that you write app.use express.json, which means it's automatically parsing every JSON object that is sent from the front end, so that whenever we call here, for example, we create a variable called username, and we set it equal to require.body the name of the variable we set in the front end, which is coincidentally username, we're getting the correct information. So we're going to do the same for the password. So const password react.body password, and we're going to make sure that these two names are the same as this two names right here. Now if we save this, I feel like this should be working. So let's basically take a look here. You can see like there's no information, and if we refresh this, and we actually need to restart our server because we just made changes to it. So node index.js. If we come here and write, for example, Pedro Tech, and my password is going to be password, and I click register. Let's see if something was console logged. Apparently there was a network error. Let me take a look. What error was this? So nothing was consoled. Let me look at my database to see if things were inserted. They weren't. Let me try again. So you can see that nothing was registered. So guys, I figured out what was the error. As you can see, we have already successfully inserted and registered a user. So basically the error was that we first wrote this wrong. So it wasn't HTTPS, it was HTTP. And also I always forget, you need to install CORS. So if you go here to your server folder and you write npm install CORS, and you simply initiate it by writing app.use CORS, you're basically allowing cross-platform, like sending information from your front end to the back end, and now everything will work. So as you can see, if we change this to like, I don't know, like what's up, it's a user, and the password is 123, and I click register, the information is going to correctly be inserted into our database. Now what we want to do is create a way so that whenever we click here and pass the login, for example, if we write what's up and 123, we want to see if this user exists or if this user doesn't exist. So if it doesn't exist, it's going to basically display user not found or something like that. And if it exists, it's going to display the username right here. So let's refresh this and let's come here and create a basic route in the backend so that we kind of check this. So if we write here app.post, no, actually, let me just write app.get, and oh, should I write a get? No, I'm going to write a post, right? App.post, and I pass this /login. This is the route we're going to create. Inside of here, we can do the same. So require and response, and we can pass a lambda function. We can, inside of here, basically grab all the same information we grabbed before, because again, we're just using a username and a password. And instead of insert, we're just going to use a select statement. So we're going to select all from users, which is the name of the table, where the username is equal to question mark and password is equal to question mark. So what does this mean? Basically, we're saying that we want to select every single element in our database, so every user which has a username equal to the username we're going to be passing, so the username we're writing over here, and the password that we're writing over here. And if it doesn't, I'm going to be sending stuff to the back to the front end saying that it hasn't. And if it does, we're going to be sending the username that we got. So as you can see, we created our route. So instead of like just console logging error when we finish this query, we want to first ask if there's an error, and we're just going to console log the error if there is an error. So if error, we want to console log the error. Else, we basically want to console log the result. So we also want to check if the result, which is going to be the result, basically it's going to be whatever this returns. We want to check if the result exists. So if result, so if there's more, if there exists a user, then I want to res.send the result. So I want to send that user. But if it doesn't, so else, I want to res.send a message, so an object which contains a message saying no user found. No, actually wrong combination. Wrong username, password combination. Okay, so for you guys to understand, I'm actually going to remove this because I just realized it doesn't even make sense to just do this. First, we ask if there's an error. We want to console log the error. And instead of this, I'm just going to res.send the error. And the reason for this is that I'm going to be basically sending an object with a property called error, and I'm going to be sending the error. The reason is our frontend is expecting an object, right? So if there's an error in our statement, we want to send to our frontend that error. And if it's sending this, it's basically going to ignore everything after it. So we don't have to worry about writing an else statement. And if it doesn't have an error, then it's going to continue. It's going to ask if the result has been returned. So if there is a username and a password, a user with that username and the password, and if there is, it's going to send the object, so the username and the password. And if it doesn't, it's going to send an object containing a message saying wrong username / password combination. So we're going to save this, and we're going to basically close our backend and run it again. And in our front end, we're going to create two other states. We're going to create a state for whatever we're writing while we're trying to log in. And honestly, I'm just going to call it username because it's easier. So username and set username. So set username and password and set password. So over here, it's also going to be a string. So this is fine. And we're just going to copy the same stuff that we did for our registration page. And on our login page, which I'm going to kind of draw some spaces so you guys can kind of clearly see, we're going to come here and change this to set username and do the same for the password input. So set password, and it should be fine. So instead of a register button, we're going to have a login button. And in this login button, we're going to basically on an on-click event, so on click, we're going to basically pass a function which is going to be login, and we're going to create that function right now. So up here, right below the register function, I'm going to copy this because they're going to be similar. I want to pass a function called login. And over here, we're going to make a post request just like last time, but instead of being register, it's going to be login. And instead of passing username reg, we're going to pass username. And instead of password reg, we're going to pass password. But it's going to be the same names for this because as you can see in our backend, we're grabbing objects to represent the username and the password with the same name. So username and password, just like we did over here. So this should be fine. We're just going to console log the response. So this should be like if we get a username correct, then it's going to basically console log a response saying which username and password you correctly entered. And if not, it's going to probably send an object with the message that we defined over here. So let's try this. Let's save this. Let's come over here and let's open a console log. Wait, I opened the wrong thing. So let's come here and go to our console and write Pedro tag and the password, which was the combination I did before. If I click login, you can see that it returns an object called data with an array with a property called data containing one single element, which is my combination. So it correctly assumed, it got our information and saw, okay, there's a user with that username and that password, so I'm going to return that, as you can see right here. But if instead, for example, I wrote my name is Pedro, and that's not a combination in our database, and I click to login, it returned the same object, but instead of here, it actually didn't return the object I wanted. Let me see why. So I fixed the error. Basically, instead of just asking if result exists, we're gonna ask if result.length is greater than 0, basically asking if the result from our select statement has a length which is greater than 0. If it is, meaning that we have found someone with that username and password combination, we're going to send it to the front end. If not, it's going to send the message. And as you can see, when we try the combination, my name is Pedro and the password, which doesn't exist in our database, it returns an object with the data saying wrong username / password combination. So basically now what we got to do is we got to output that in the screen so that we have a visual representation of the fact if we logged in or not. So we're going to create a state right here called login status. So login status here, and set login status equal to use state, and it's basically going to be a string as well. So that's fine. And on the bottom here, below everything, we just gotta output our information. So it's going to be an h1, and inside of here we're going to write login status. And basically what we need to do is we need to just make it so that we're setting login status equal to like something equal to login status, right? So in our console log response, we can see that whenever we try a combination, it outputs an object, right? So let me try whatever. You'll see that it will output an object containing a property called data. And this is standard for whenever you're trying to send information from the backend. What we need to do is, instead of just grabbing the response, like we're console logging the response, we need to console log the response.data so that we only see the message, as you can see right here. So for example, if we're going to ask right here, if response.data dot length, so if it's an array, right? So let's ask if response.data.message. So if that property exists, then we want to set status. So set login status equal to response.data.message, right? And else, if that doesn't exist, so if we actually got a user, we want to set it equal to the response.data, and we're going to grab the first element because, as you remember, it sends an array. So despite being only one element, it's an array of one element. We can just grab the first one, and at the end we can write .username so that we're displaying the username. So if we come here and we try to log in with whatever, you can see that if we click login, now it displays wrong username and password combination. However, if we try to log in with the name Pedro Tech and use the password, you can see that now it shows the name of the user that tried to log in. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I think this is a very simple login system that you can try to implement in any project. So again, in this series, I'm going to be making 3 videos. This is the very simple version of it because authentication is a very hard thing to do. It took me a long time to actually understand stuff. And honestly, it's not necessary when you're starting to learn React or work with the backend, because you're not going to make any projects that actually require that much security, right? So basically, in the next video, I'm going to be making a little bit more sophisticated version of this. However, only in the future, I'm going to be making a full-on, ready to be deployed version of an authentication, due to the fact that it is really hard to do and you got to be very careful when you're trying to do one. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please check out my Discord, which there's a link down below. I have other subscribers who are asking me questions, and if you have any question, you can comment down below or go to my Discord and ask me there. So please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and I see you guys next time.